You're listening to KWOU. Coming up next, the amazing, unbelievable adventures of Dr. Theophilius Crux, Ph.D., and his faithful companion Archibald the Tasmanian emu.
Frankly, I find your company disquieting, if not outwardly revolting. Go away. You've been uninvited from this little party of ours. Only you get to say. And you, but not your friend. They can go. Okay then, let's do this. We'll be doing something different today. I've been wanting to feature writers from Woo on this show, hold up their unique genius to the light, and let mine lurk in the shadows for a while. I don't want to burn myself out on a story that I feel has just begun, or overload a schedule I anticipate to be busy. Thus, I want to see what's in the eyes within the ears of other people. And today, that other person is Sadie Martin. And don't you worry. We'll still hear from Luce and Mrs. Nowhatter and everyone, and with a poem at the end, because despite it all, this is still the amazing, unbelievable adventures of Dr. Theophilius Crux, Ph.D., and his faithful companion Archibald, the Tasmanian emu. So, in the interest of illuminating the looming shadows within the blooming meadows of likewise lucid minds as mine, we have here Sadie Martin herself in the studio with us, as much as they can be, for a candid and cantankerous collection of interview questions. Sadie, how are you?
Considering my existence so far this week, I'd say I'm doing pretty good.
That's good, that's good. So, Sadie, what are your pronouns?
She, her, they, them, it, its, and all of the above.
And what are your nouns?
I would say my nouns are person, student, and possibly being.
What are your adjectives?
Red, flustered, and quiet.
Okay, so where is it? We know you have it, but you've been as tight-lipped as an Easter Island moe about it until now.
I think the better question is, why haven't you found it yet?
That is a fair question. Is January a good month?
Not as good as February.
Yes or no? Why are you here?
No.
In your opinion, is mayonnaise?
Sure.
My diamond mind is extremely brittle. I cannot wrap it around hardly anything, least of all the omnipresently elusive love. Explain to me love as if I were an alien entity from a completely different plane of reality that could somehow still speak English but only in a British accent.
Love is a state of being. It is not an emotion, and it is not a chemical compound as much as people like to say it is. It is simply human.
I don't understand humans.
That's the point.
Is water wet, and more importantly, is that the right question to be asking?
Water is neither wet nor dry. It simply is, and I think a better question to ask is fire hot?
How long have you been writing?
A few years now.
What does inspiration feel like?
It feels like a buzzing in my brain, a need to get it down onto paper, and if I don't, it'll be gone.
How do you deal with the overwhelming immediacy of the awareness of your existence?
Most of the time, I am completely unaware of my existence as a whole, so I usually don't.
Oh, that sounds wonderful. Book, film, or show that inspires you?
I am incredibly inspired by Harry Potter.
Why?
Because it's magical, and I do believe that magic is something fairly important to me.
That is true. I mean, they are British, so I think they're inherently magical. If you dreamed of an emperor penguin, what would it say to you, and why is he a registered libertarian?
It would probably say to me that I should be less capitalistic, and it's probably a registered libertarian because it's an emperor penguin, and everybody knows that emperor penguins are the most advanced of all penguins.
That's a fair point. Who is that figure standing in your peripheral vision?
Oh, that's just Charlie. Ignore him.
Okay. Why do you write? And more importantly, what do you write?
I write because I have to, and what I write is usually determined in the moment.
What have you determined in the moment to write now?
So far, nothing, but previously, poetry, and in the future, who knows?
You have 3 options, purple, 3, or death. One of them has to die, but the other 2 hunt you for the rest of your life? What is that? Define life using at least 3 questions that start with the letter U and then proceed with the prior question.
Unbelievably, utterly unoriginal, and something that I would rather just not have to deal with in its entirety. And as for the 3 options, I choose purple. And I am completely fine with 3 and death chasing me, because death is already chasing me, and the number 3 is just a figure.
You shall regret your decision. Why did the dinosaurs have to die?
To make way for mammals.
I don't feel like I have much of an identity. You just like open up the hood of my car and all there is 1,000 writhing snakes all eating each other's tails. There's no foundation on which an entity called Jasper stands. It's just a continual cycle of negating whatever selfhood I try to assert. See what I did there? I've found existentialism is quite descriptive of this particular feeling I have. What does existence feel like to you? Do you have an identity? What the hell does that even mean?
Existence to me sort of feels like being in a bath for far too long and your fingertips start to get wrinkly and you know that you should get out, but you just can't drag yourself out of the tub because the walls are too slicked with shampoo and whatnot to even begin to drag yourself out of the depths of its porcelain cage. As for identity, I can't say that anybody really does. I think we really are all just an amalgamation of attributes and various reptilian beings.
I wish I was a reptilian being. In the context of the last question, what is art?
Art is like existence, but more tangible, so it's easier for people to digest.
Should hippos be allowed to vote?
I think so.
Why?
Because there's no reason for them not to. I mean, they're larger and stronger, and I mean, if they can't swim, they might as well have something going for them.
Which political leanings do you think most hippos would have?
Probably Republican.
If you had to eat an element once a day from the periodic table, why is it tungsten?
I think the question is, why is it not tungsten?
That is a fair question. I do not have an answer for that. I sit here hog swallowed by my own interview questions. On a scale of 1 to 10, are you real?
7.
I personally struggle with solipsism. Want to hear a joke?
Yes.
Interrupting pterodactyl.
Interrupting pterodactyl who?
Pterodactyls are extinct. Anyway, I've heard that there's only 8 days left until the end of the prophecy. Do you believe in the prophecy? Until the end of the world. Do you believe in the prophecy?
I don't think I have a choice whether I believe in the prophecy or not. The prophecy simply is, and we shall see in 8 days whether it's true or not.
I guess that's true for everybody. Do you like jazz?
I do indeed.
If you had a sizable budget, what would you do with your life?
Probably just use the budget to make everyone happy, including myself, if that's even possible.
What makes you happy?
A lot of things make me happy. People that I love, things that I enjoy, things that remind me that existence is okay sometimes, and that includes boba tea.
What is your favorite pair of rhyming words?
Ridiculously meticulous.
How is poetry more powerful than normal speech? Isn't it all just the same nonsense syllables?
It is, but poetry is more palatable because of its ridiculousness. It is to smoothies as water is to wetness. It simply is, and you can disagree if you want to, but that's all I can say about it.
In your opinion, what is the proper relationship between fiction and reality, or what's the difference?
Reality is fiction. Fiction is just another word for an existence in which it fills the void ours lacks.
What is your opinion of Matt Brown?
I think he may care a little too much, but that's a good thing. And he also reminds me of my good friend Matt Brown, who exists in another plane of reality outside of your radio show. So I'd have to say my opinion of him is a requirement to be fairly good.
You're wrong. There is only one Matt Brown. What is Matt Brown's opinion of you?
Matt Brown's opinion of me is lacking, but if he were to have an opinion of me, I'd say it would be neutral good.
Do rocks feel depressed?
Yes.
What is one thing you shouldn't personify?
Rocks.
What's your favorite food?
Sushi.
What kind of sushi?
Yes.
Fair point. A cool name for an anthropomorphic airplane.
Wind.
A cool thing about experiencing existence as far as we can tell here at Western Oregon University.
The cherry blossom trees are quite lovely this time of year.
Does the invisible woman staring through the window at you judge you for your choice of shirt? Moreover, if she does, what does she recommend you wear instead?
No, but she does judge me on my choice of pants. She thinks I should wear more fishnets. I think I'm far too shy for that.
That's a fair point. Well, I mean, she is invisible, so she doesn't really have to deal with shyness very often. I only assign meanings to my writing retroactively. Is this stupid, and would you like to speak about what any of your poems mean?
I don't think it's stupid. I think everyone assigns meaning to their writing in their own time, and you may do it retroactively while I do it far into the past of what my writing is to begin with. And as for what my writing means, oftentimes it's about very specific very specific emotions and scenarios and experiences that I or others may have. After all, no one's had an original experience in their entire life. So I think my poetry is catered to those very specific wavelengths of our brain chemistry.
Is it possible to unbelieve something once you have believed it? If so, do you find this show unbelievable?
I believe it is possible to unbelieve something when you have believed it. People go through that all the time. The Tooth Fairy, Santa Claus, happiness, God. As for this radio show, no, I don't find it unbelievable.
And now, poetry by Sadie Martin.
This poem is called You Are the Sun. I heard someone say once, you choose your own fate. I don't think that's very fair, because in that case I am forced to choose. Do I freeze or burn? It's funny. I'm pale. Not just genetically, although that's also true, no. I am pale from a lack of sunlight. I spend my days shut in my room, wishing I were outside but being unable to pull myself out of the depths of my covers to do so. I know it would be good for me. At least that's what I hear. Maybe that's what I feared, and starving myself of sunlight was some passive way to self-harm, and, in contrast, maybe that's why I was so sure. Maybe that's why I allowed myself to be drawn to you. You are the sun. And it's funny, you'd think someone so used to the dark would be used to the cold, but I find myself shivering despite that. I grow impossibly paler, nearly blue, tears in my eyes as I search endlessly for the sun, for you. All while sitting still, alone, forever. Until recently, of course. You fed me, fed my desire for vitamin D, dedicating to never do anything for me, and despite your plans, I attach myself firmly, sinking my teeth into the hand that heard me and spread my wings. You are the sun. You are the sun, and I am Icarus, and I am falling, my own narcissism dragging across the flesh of my spine, the reality of my mistake scalding my shoulders into an unrecognizable gore. I am sorry for getting so close. I should have listened. The boiling should have been my warning. Nay, the very fact you exist before me should have been deterring enough. You are palpable. terrifyingly real. Why did I think I could ever compare to you? And I know I shouldn't complain. I shouldn't even speak of burning as a pale, cold someone who spent their days yearning for your warmth because I could so easily just fall away from you. Let gravity consume me, ripping me down into its embrace with the strength of a being who knows better. I could avoid your flames. I know I could. I could repeat old habits, hide away from your rays. It's so easy to let go of someone when they push you away so readily, but I know if I were ever to drift away, I'd be dragged into the sea, my wings which once scorched me now freezing and breaking off, leaving me defenseless in my own ocean. And I thought I was a good swimmer. And I contradict myself again because I know I could never let that happen. I can't go back to my waters, I'd drown. In such a short time, I've gotten used to the sky and forgotten the ground, and even if I wanted to, you are the sun. You are everywhere. Even the shadows, which distinctly define themselves despite you, indicate a lack of you. I am sorry. I don't really know where this is going. I am clinging desperately to a log floating toward the bay. I touched you once, and it hurt. It burned, but it healed so quickly. And the old scar aches when I look into your sky. Do I try again? I just might. Take flight. Take away my flight. Take away my power to fight and decide for me, against me, or for me. Because I know I've already made my decision to freeze or burn. But I find myself looking back at how things were, an endless, heavy, freezing night, and feel a sudden craving for sunlight. This next poem is called Heard Me. You heard me. I know you did, because you're looking at me so expectantly. As if my voice were the only thing you could care about in this moment. As if I actually mattered. What a concept. I'd ask you to explain, but ignorance is blissful and expression is annoying. So I'll just sit here and pretend to understand and avoid your gaze like a mosquito avoids the flame. You heard me. And you hurt me. You know you did, because the moment you silenced yourself was the moment you couldn't look away, a grim line forming from your lips. Your perception of me, observing my very corporeality, like hot nails driving into my very being. The pain is unbearable. So I sit silently, trying not to wilt under your relentless judgment. I thought you heard me, but you hurt me. And you're only here to herd me, like a dog unto sheep, like a fence upon my fields. You keep your distance while dictating mine. You think I don't mind. I think you're blind. I think you'll find beyond my fog. I've timed every second you stared at me, with eyes that seek to pull me apart, with lies that think I'm in grayscale. I'll play hell, if that's what you expect of me. Give me the gasoline, the guns and the air horns. You refuse to acknowledge me, so I'll make myself impossible to ignore. You only like me when I'm quiet. Obedience is nice, but I won't be silenced. I refuse to be looked at like that anymore. Don't you dare look away. I know you heard me.
We'll return to the evermore impending end of the world after the break. You're listening to KWOU. They're all in a carriage now, courtesy of Hatter Family Carriaging Services, all of them palpably despondent, sans the driver, who is having a particularly good day for inexplicable reasons. Perhaps it is the fact that he has been paid triple his normal commission to drive all the way out here, or perhaps it is some good news he has received from his until recently estranged cousin from Tisbury regarding his forthcoming return from that tepid town back unto his natal regions. Or perhaps, dear listeners, it is the bag of cashews and dried apricots that rests plumply beside the driver, having no expectations of him, but merely being wholly content in its existence as open, an offering of its hearty contents. I strongly suspect it is a combination of the three, but the driver most resonates with the cashew bag. In many ways, he is like it, or at least trying to be. And if a mishmash of fruits and legumes can be happy, why, oh why can't he? But this story is not about the driver. To be fair, it's not about the passengers either. I believe it's been clearly established that this story is about the horse, who is now one of 7 horses pulling said Hatter family carriage. But despite his new location and occupation, nothing truly new has occurred to the horse. Even in his gleeful trot, he wanders dreamlike across the dew-laden plain. He is a monolith, ever mysterious, but ultimately both boring and bored. No, we shall once again plunge into the deep and focus our ever-erratic attention on these 5 poor schmucks, wrestling with themselves in a philosophical manner, mind you, and their increasingly apparent transience in all of this sound and fury. Well, mostly sound. The fury is yet to come. But the sound now envelops their worlds. Their eyes within their ears are clouded with the gray truth of the soundbite, still singing softly to hold tight to something that it did not offer you. Every crunch of gravel sounds like revelation. Every creaking door sounds like wrath. The 5 are strewn about inside the cab in a very lackadaisical, washed-up way, like each of them were doing their very best impression of pre-void Luce, except Luce, of course, who has much too many things to think about now to be washed up. He, along with the turtle and desert tortoise, who in total amount to just short of mattering, are the only ones trying to puzzle over the enigma that the small yellow lizard had presented them. While it is true that, being reptiles, our 2-shelled subjects are indeed co-conspirators, they were not present at enough reptile world order meetings to get a good grasp of the situation. Fuchsia began to cry. "Why are you crying, Fuchsia?" said the author, confused as to why she would do that. I don't know, it just overcame me in the moment, I guess. Hey, wait a minute. This is a fine time for you to start talking to me again. Well, that's fair, said the author, feeling a little guilty for what Fuchsia went through. I don't suppose my usual line about it being all for the best will mean much for you at this point? Fuchsia sniffed. No, it won't. The author hung his head, fighting the urge to delete everything he just wrote. I'm sorry, Fuchsia. In the interest of being completely honest, which is something pretty rare in this show, I can't pretend that I have your best interest at heart. I want to, and I know that honestly, but I guess what I'm trying to say is that the gods are crazy, and that you should by no means trust me. Shut up, Jasper. You don't get to speak. Luce and the turtles are still trying to figure out what the soundbite means. What does the soundbite mean? Wonders Luce. What is the meaning of the soundbite? Ponders the turtle. What does it mean for the meaning of the soundbite to mean a sound-like meaning that a soundbite would normally have to mean meaningfully? A meaningless meaning doesn't sound right, but I mean a soundbite in its sound mind would mean exactly the meaning between meaninglessness and clean meaning, a median meaning in the middle of the street cleaning that the soundbite clearly means to mediate to us, the listeners, offers the desert tortoise. Well put, said the turtle. I can't believe you guys are still ticking away on that soundbite, groaned Augustine. You can't believe anything, sighed Mrs. Cincehatter, hatted since yesterday. As a vampire, you're not allowed to. Allowed to? Squinted Matt Brown. There's no one to allow or not allow anything for us vampires. Not anymore, at least. The rich have been eaten. We're fresh out. They're off the menu. Your individualism is compelling, Matt Brown, but deliberately out of touch with reality. The vampire's indulgent tastes go both ways. After a while, the victims become accustomed to being the feast. They've acquired a taste for their own blood as well. Thus, it doesn't matter how many executive boards we break, the people, if you'll allow me to indulge in populism, will simply reinstall some new master to suck them dry. Whichever despot they've chosen, there's a high likelihood that they'd want to clean house, so to speak, and eliminate the variables that rogue vampires such as ourselves would be to their regime de mauvaise foi. Pardon my French. Augustine looked out the window and counted the passing sagebrush to distract from the awkward silence of the truth that she spoke. I don't like my new role as the voice of reason. We all know damn well that reason has been mute ever since she was strangled by Will. Who's this Will fellow? Forayed Fuchsia. He seems unfriendly. Nobody that you aren't already intimately familiar with, Fuchsia. Will's not a bad guy, but he certainly does bad things. He does good things too. I guess most important is the fact that he does things at all, which is certainly worlds more than reason ever did. Mrs. Cincehatter frowned. Well, let's not be so hasty. I'm rather fond of reason. Why couldn't she do anything? Augustine shrugged. She was too busy, caring for her blind sister Justice and her catatonic sister Liberty, both of which were practically bedridden after trying to do way too much with their lives. Still, you can't help but feel sorry for them. More than sorry, said Fuchsia, invested now in the lie that Augustine was spinning. Are they all right? Does reason still take care of them after she was strangled? Why did Will go and do a thing like that anyhow? Why? Matt Brown sat up, invested now in the nihilistic tone of this meaningless parable. Reason takes care of the wise. She's always why this, and because that. Quite frankly, it's tiresome. Will is his own because. He doesn't need to go catching them out of the air with a net like reason. Will simply is, and thus he does. Powerful, isn't it? Well, yeah, argued Fuchsia, unhappy about where this was going. But doesn't power corrupt? Doesn't will lead to evil? Matt Brown leaned in for the kill. It's not like reason has done a better job of it. Fuchsia crumpled into a ball. She was tired of all of this talk. She had not a foundation to stand on, only different manners in which to fall. In desperation, she reached out to a cliff face she knew would break every bone in her body, but feeling that would at least be better and more positively existent than this sheer gravity. She reached out her hand. What about love? The eyes of Matt Brown dilated. What about it? Her skeleton exploded into a million pieces. She could barely muster never mind. Matt Brown grew to 10 feet tall inside the carriage, his shadow consuming all light, and he spoke with the voice of an artillery cannon. He said, I knew you were weak, Fuchsia, doe-eyed in your desperation for some justification for your undeath, and furthermore, I was a fool to think that I could have been anything close to an example of how to supersede that childish impulse, and this is proof. The final insult to the injury of the broken-backed camel that led itself to water only to find that it could not drink. Fuchsia! What on earth are you doing appealing to... I can't even say it. Love, love, love. So orgasmically screamed by every singer in a drunken stupor, every demagogue, every ideologue and spotlight hog, as if it means something, let alone meaning everything. You want to know why Will strangled reason, Fuchsia? You want to know why we haven't heard from her in 10,000 years? You want to know why? Because of love. Reason promised Will that she would give herself to him, that there would always be a reason for him being there, but lo and behold, Reason, lacking the will to continue, got bored and wandered off in pursuit of happiness, a distant relative of death. You may have heard of her. Thus, Will, betrayed, strangled his quote-unquote lover, so that she couldn't lie anymore. Matt Brown drifted like ashes down next to Fuchsia. And you want to know the moral of this meaningless story, Fuchsia? The moral is, reason is a liar, happiness leaves you dry, and love is a 4-letter word. Put that one in a fortune cookie and burn down the restaurant. And Matt Brown disappeared, cat-like in his disdain for Fuchsia's existence. Fuchsia just laid there, unresolved like a jazz chord, wanting to spite Matt Brown's instruction to sustain it, but unable to find a way to. Again, she broke into tears, horrible, shuddering sobs, indeed, just as Matt Brown said, like a child. And the author resisted the urge to delete everything he had just written, and furthermore resisted the urge to intervene, diabolus ex machina, so he shut his mouth, but did not turn his face away. He needed to see this. Fuchsia's companions, too, resisted the urge to say anything. As always, they had many things to say, but they knew that any of it would simply make things worse. Why did they keep Matt Brown around anyhow? Who would want to spend such time with a jerk like that? The silence gave way to the persistent petitions of the soundbite, still mythologizing the sound of traffic into something profound. It was agonizing in a good way, spurring them on and away from giving up, even if its promises were empty. Perhaps that's the real moral of the meaningless parable. Perhaps they should all strive to be a little bit more like the carriage driver who heard all of these transpirations and yet still remains inexplicably happy. His happiness's inexplicability being as crucial as his being happy. As soon as you explain something, it dies. And in keeping with such a spirit, a closing poem. I put a black box on my head. Silly me, the self-referential man said. Now I can't see anything inside or out. The path out of this house is the side door route. Roundabout thinking while the kitchen sink is sinking. Clinking silverware where the grown-ups are drinking. Round the clock, brown the pot roasting. Down the shop, most of all, toast the hostess and boast who got the closest to the sun before they melted. No ifs, ands, buts, ors smelted. Smelling like sulfur, so sweet, but it's all for nothing. Still, I understand the hoax of that hopeless smoke you're huffing. Ill you are, but I won't say that to your face, pretty as it is. Film noir taught me the nuance of my right white habitus. It's hazardous being a haphazard whiz with attitude, without a clue. A half-assed dude at noon, showing up late to my duel with the dune itself. I hate sand like I'm Anakin, but I stand like a mannequin. Call me a renegade, cause renovation's so un-American. Generic is the last thing I will be, cause I got a long to-do list. Let me stretch out this kilometer, because I long to do this. But also, I fear it. That ringing, you hear it. A stone wall, I clear it, but somehow I'm clearly uneducated, debating whether it's overrated or dated or overstated. I'm so jaded, like my community's all gated, and I'm banging on the door like Andre, let me in, hanging on your every word like laundry, let me spin. The wheel of fortune is torturing me. The tiki torch resort is 4 stars out of 3. Can't you see what I see? Here, look, take my kaleidoscope. You and I are spinning through space, and we collide, I hope. It's what keeps me afloat in this sinking frat house. In the desert of smoke, you know it's the rats that get out. Before we're all swallowed, and these words are hollowed by a priest with a carving knife. Do you follow? Silly you, the self-centered man said. That's what you get with a black box on your head. Tune in next week for the next episode. Unfortunately, due to budget cuts, I am unable to reimburse you for your time, so please take the following statement as recompense in its stead. I'm Jasper Beck.
And I'm Sadie Martin.
And this is the amazing, unbelievable adventures of Dr. Theophilius Crux, Ph.D., and his faithful companion Archibald, the Tasmanian emu. You're listening to KWOU.